In 2004, to the dismay of many fans, NASCAR introduced the Chase for the Cup. This was a way to guarantee a championship battle every year and ensure that we wouldn't have someone lock up the title weeks in advance. And this was for good reason, as it happened the last 5 out of 6 seasons, and since the format was brought in, it has given us some unforgettable moments, whether good or bad. But a question that floats around a lot is what would have happened if we brought in the Chase when the Lathrop system was introduced back in 1975? Well, that's why I'm here. This is the start of a new series called Making the Chase. This will be a series where I take each season from 1975 to now and tell the story as if that particular year had the original 2004 Chase format. So with that being said, let's kick the series off with the 1975 season. Before we dive into what would go down in the 1975 Chase, we have to talk about the fight to get into the Chase. Heading into the cutoff race in Michigan, 9 of the 10 Chase spots were already locked up, leaving one last spot up for grabs. Walter Ballard was the holder of the 10 seed by 19 points over Frank Warren and 20 points over Buddy Baker. The others on the outside looking in would be Cale Yarborough and the long shots of Ed Negger and David Sisko. At Michigan, Negger and Sisko would be non-factors and were really nowhere close to making it, and Frank Warren was also a non-factor as he finished almost 50 laps down in 26. So this left the bubble battle to Walter Ballard, Buddy Baker, and Cale Yarborough. Ballard finished the race 11th while Baker finished the race in 6th, and this meant that they were now tied on points for the last Chase spot. But what about Yarborough? While Yarborough finished ahead of both of them in 3rd, he was just 4 points short of making the 1975 Chase. But the tiebreaker between Baker and Ballard would be wins. And well, this category wasn't even close, with Baker having 4 wins as opposed to Ballard's 0. And with that, the 1975 Chase field was set. In the opening Chase race at Darlington, it was actually a non-Chase driver in Bobby Allison winning the race, with Richard Petty being the highest finishing Chase driver coming home second. But besides Richard Petty, the Chase opener was not good to the contenders. Only 5 of the Chase drivers would finish inside the top 20, and leaving the opener, Richard Petty had a solid lead over Richard Childress. But it was early, so maybe someone can take the lead away from Petty. But Petty would win the second race at the Dover Downs and now had an almost 90-point lead over Childress, and Petty easily separated himself as the early favorite. And well, in the 3rd race at North Wilkesboro, Petty continued to show his dominance and won his 2nd consecutive race, and now had a commanding 132-point lead over Richard Childress, who finished the race a solid 8th place, but that just wasn't enough. Now, if anyone was going to catch Petty, they would have to hope for a miracle, and at the 4th race in Martinsville, that's exactly what they would get. Petty had a mechanical failure around the halfway point of the race and finished the race 22nd, and the driver moving into 2nd would be the 1973 champion, Benny Parsons. Parsons was now 64 points behind Petty, and now seemed like a legitimate threat. But at the very next race in Charlotte, Petty bounced back and won the race while Parsons finished 4th. And Petty now had an 89-point lead over Parsons, halfway through the Chase. In the 6th race of the Chase at Richmond, Petty had an early engine failure and finished 28th, which was last in that race. What a weird thing to say. Now this was a prime opportunity for both Childress and Parsons to close in on Petty, but both drivers choked away their chances with Childress finishing 21st and Parsons finishing 18th. And while Parsons did get the gap down to 54 points, it was nowhere near as much as it could have been. But at the next race at Rockingham, Petty gave them yet another opportunity with an engine failure just 20 laps in, and Petty finished 35th. But once again, Parsons wasted an opportunity and only managed a 24th place finish. And Parsons was now trailing by just 26 points. But in the 8th race at Bristol, Petty would reassert himself as the championship favorite with a dominant win, while Parsons finished the race 5th and Petty now had a 51-point advantage. In the penultimate race of the season at Atlanta, Richard Petty finished the race 3rd, while Parsons had a miserable day finishing 26 laps down in 19th, and the gap heading into the finale was 155 points. And all Petty had to do was finish 41st, and well, there were only 40 cars in the last race, so that handed the 1975 Winston Cup Championship to Richard Petty a week early. In 1975, Petty was simply unstoppable, winning 4 races, recording 6 top 5s and 6 top 10s with an average finish of 11.0. Now Petty's chase is solid but very inconsistent. He had 4 DNFs in the chase, but in the 6 races he did finish, he had an average finish of 1.5, which is what allowed him to clinch the championship. Now this was a season that definitely needed the chase. Petty in real life won this championship by over 700 points, which by 70s standards is almost 4 races. Petty was so dominant in 1975 that it still carried over into this alternate timeline, and that's why Richard Petty would win his 6th championship in 1975. Now before I go, I have to address something regarding this series and this channel. While this is a new series, don't expect it to be an every week type deal. Now what I mean is that this series could be an 8 straight week thing or just an occasional video. I don't really know at this point, and it's honestly just going to be whatever I feel like doing. The reason why is back when I was doing rewriting history, I absolutely hated it. The problem I had with that series was the fact that this was the low point of the channel. I think a mistake I made was making those videos and beating the series into the ground and not making any fresh content. This channel at that time didn't see much growth, and I honestly considered quitting. So I will not make the same mistake with this series. I'm going to try my best to keep this channel fresh. I might do a documentary style here and there or just something totally different. I guess we'll all find out together. Anyway, thanks for watching and please support this series. It's been a year in the making and I really want this to do well. But anyway, I'll see you next week for another video. Y'all have a good one.